I don't believe you should ask for referrals. And most of the advice out there is that if you're not asking, you're actually doing something wrong.
This is the Sales Babble Podcast, episode 206, How to Generate Referrals Without Asking, an interview with Stacey Brown Randall.
Welcome to Sales Babble, the podcast that shares selling secrets for non-sellers. And now your host, Pat Helmers.
Hello, Sales Babblers. This is Pat Helmers. And today we're going to talk about leveraging your business networks and getting referrals in a powerful way so that you can grow your business. Unfortunately, this process of getting referrals, it's poorly understood, and rarely do people follow it all the way to the end. Because for the most part, the majority of the people are uncomfortable asking clients to do something that would actually help their business. So you've done something for them, but the idea that you would ask them to do something for you, most people don't want anything to do with that. They think it's rude. They just don't have what it takes to do that. And instead what happens is most people end up doing nothing. But there's an alternative to that, and that's where I bring in our guest, Stacey Brown Randall, because she kind of agrees with this way of thinking. She thinks you should not outright ask for a referral. She shows an alternative way of earning those referrals without directly asking. So, with no further ado, let's get to it. Welcome, Stacey. Are you ready to babble?
Yes, Pat, let's babble.
Stacey, you are all about referrals. And
I am.
And that's probably one of the hot topics that we like to talk about here in Sales Babble, because the one thing people are always short of is sales leads.
You know, I think that it's one of those topics that should be talked about more and more. It's the best way, in my opinion, to grow your pipeline of prospects. But it's also what I find with most people, it's a little bit more misunderstood. Like, it seems so straightforward, but it's actually a little bit misunderstood in terms of, well, how do I get those referrals? How do I make it happen?
Well, it seems kind of simple to me. Don't I just ask my customers, you seem to like what we did. Do you know anybody who might want my services or products?
So the majority of people, I believe, aren't actually comfortable asking. Right. So I think there are some people, Pat, just like you said, hey, my clients are happy. Let me just ask them who else do they know that should be working with me. And in theory, I think it sounds so simple. It's so easy, right? I mean, it was a couple of sentences.
Yeah.
But it's what you're actually asking that person to do that stops a lot of people cold in their tracks. And so whereas, yes, you can ask. I tell people you totally can ask. But if you're not comfortable asking, what is your alternative? And I believe for decades, there has been no alternative, because the only advice we've been giving, or the experts have been giving us, are, well, if you want them, just go ask. If you want that referral, you're going to have to ask. And then they say, and if you're not willing to ask, then you have your own head trash to get over. But I believe there are millions of people in the world who would just be like, I'd prefer not to ask. And because there hasn't ever been another way, they don't ask, which means they're not generating referrals. They're missing out. And I just didn't like how that sounded. So I was like, we're just going to figure out a way maybe to generate referrals without asking. Because if the majority of people, in my opinion, aren't comfortable asking, there should be an alternative.
How did you come to this realization?
So like most people, when I was with my first business, so I have a business failure in my background that has taught me a lot of lessons.
A business failure?
Yes. I'm a multiple serial entrepreneur, but not because I made billions and sold my first business. It's because it fell on its face and took me with it.
I'm so sorry.
Oh, I'm not. I'm really not. I mean, please, if we were having this conversation, like right after it happened, I would have been still licking my wounds, feeling sorry for myself. But now I'm years past it, and I am not sad that it happened at all. I'm actually very, very glad. And really, at some point, never thought I'd say that. But I'm actually very glad that business failure happened, because it taught me a lot. And when I looked back on my business, it was an HR consulting firm. When I looked back on that business, I realized that I wasn't doing everything right. And one of the things I was doing wrong was that I didn't find a way to touch business development every day. But let's be honest, Pat, I'm like most people who actually want to go into business for themselves or want to be in sales, right? I actually want to help people. I don't want to become the master salesperson, right? I mean, I know there are some people out there who want to be that, but for me, sales is a part of the business I started. It's just one of the hats that I wear. And so in reality, when I looked back and I realized, wow, I'm not touching business development every day. There's no way a business can be successful unless you are. But if you're going to have to do it every day, you're going to default to the things you're willing to do. And you better find something you're willing to do, or you'll end up like me with a big fat business failure. And so when I started my second business, I looked back at my first one and I said, okay, got to touch business development every day. What in the heck am I willing to do? And what I realized is I want referrals. I like that version of sales. I like those types of conversations that happen when someone's been referred to me. And so I'm like anyone else. I went out and I started researching. Okay, so there's got to be a system. There's got to be a process. How do I get more referrals? And of all the information I came across, articles, books, courses, it didn't matter. The advice was almost always the same. If you want them, then ask. They didn't tell me to ask. They told me to use some referral kit gimmick, at least it felt like a gimmick to me, to get someone to send my information to someone else on my behalf. So it was either ask or use a gimmick, or it was don't ask, do great quality service. And then I felt like they were leaving me with and cross your fingers and hope it happens. And none of those three worked for me. And I was like, nope, I want to figure out that there's got to be a way to generate referrals. So I used my second business as a guinea pig because I didn't want to cold call and I didn't want to network every night of the week. I mean, I've got 3 kids. Like I didn't want to do all the traditional things I think they teach you in sales training, or they teach you when you're trying to grow a business and to bring in more sales. So I was like, let me see if I can generate referrals, but I got to figure out a way to get around the asking part. And that's what I did. I mean, I literally turned my business into a guinea pig. It was a business and productivity coach. Literally turned my business into my guinea pig and figured out some steps and some processes to follow to generate referrals without asking. I don't believe you should ask for referrals. And most of the advice out there is that if you're not asking, you're actually doing something wrong. And now that's what I teach people how to do, because I just think it's an alternative if you don't want to ask. And it works, so it's a worthy alternative.
And you did this when you started your business?
My second business, yes.
Now you didn't have customers or clients then. How did you get referrals?
So I always tell people that when I was starting my second business, it was a little bit different because people knew me as a consultant, and they knew me as a consultant in the HR space. And now all of a sudden I was a certified productivity coach who was growing my business from a productivity and business coaching. So I did what I tell people to always do in the beginning, and not everybody likes it, but I did the 7 million cups of coffee. I have a friend who calls it that, the 7 million cups of coffee, because I had to have people start thinking about me differently than they were. So I reached out to my network. Luckily,
the 7 million cups of coffee? I've never heard of this.
Yeah. So it's just a saying my friend uses, and I think it's and I
it's
think
a book
brilliant.
I missed or something.
No, she is actually working on a book, but I don't know where she is in the process. So the reality of it is that you have to spend time with your network, letting them know what you do. So I had to spend time with my network, not having them think about me as this HR consultant, but now seeing me as this productivity and business coach. And so in the early part, I spent time meeting with those people. And as I started picking up clients just from within my network, then from there, the referrals would start. And in the beginning, I will tell you, I didn't know why. Like, I was trying to figure it out. I knew I was giving great service. I knew I was getting great results. And then I was starting to figure out what the pieces I could do that would almost like push the levers of generating referrals. And it was really trial and error until I figured out, oh, there's a process, there's a pattern, and I can boil it down into these 5 steps. But if you're starting out with nobody, there is a little bit of, old school networking that you kind of have to do, because people need to understand who you are and what you're doing. And so there's that piece of it. But after that, after the business started to grow, like my first 3 clients were people that had just known me in my previous life, and they all liked what I happened to say. And I wasn't pitching them. I was literally spending time with them so they would know what I was doing, so they could just keep me top of mind, right? If they came across anybody. I think that's what it looks like in the beginning of starting in sales or starting a business. And from there, those 3 people happened to like what I was saying. And they'd be like, I think I need that. And I'm like, well, then let's work together, right? But from those, like the very first person I brought on, my fourth client was a referral from my first client. And then I started realizing that, yes, you have to do great work. You have to provide great service, or what I call a sticky client experience. But outside of that, there's also a way to push some levers to make some referrals happen in addition to that. And that's just what I figured out, kind of the hard way, kind of by trial and fire, or trial by accident, I guess you could say. And then I realized, oh, wait, I can boil these down into a couple of simple steps that if I continue to follow, will continue to produce referrals.
You said there were 5 steps.
Yes.
Let's walk through them.
Sure. So the 5 steps are, and I tell folks, all 5 steps are pretty simple. I would tell you my secret sauce it's always in step 3. So I don't think anything about what I teach is complicated, but the secret sauce that I teach my students in my online program and in my VIP sessions is all that secret sauce sits in what I call step 3 or module 3. But so step 1 is you've got to know who's referring you. You need to know who your referral sources actually are. And for some people, they don't start out with a lot, and some people do. It really depends how long you've been in sales or how long you've been in business to determine how many referral sources you have. But the number doesn't interest me. It's you knowing the names of those people is what I'm ultimately after. And I always tell my students, you don't know who to cultivate more referrals from if you don't know who's already referring you. And if you don't have people referring you, that's okay. That's totally okay, because there's a process and a system that I also teach for people who need to increase their number of referral sources. And there's a process for that if you want to do it for clients, and a process for that if you want to do it for, centers of influence, people in your network who aren't your actual clients. There's processes for things. You just have to be willing to put them into practice. But step 1 is always know who is referring you. And I also tell folks it's also important to understand if you're actually receiving a referral or not, because people confuse a warm lead, an introduction, and word of mouth buzz with referrals all the time. And those are 4 distinct, different types of prospects, or types of what I refer to as sales lingo, so to speak. They're 4 different things. And so you can't close a referral as easy as you're supposed to be able to if you're not actually dealing with a referral. So you have to know what a referral looks like, and you have to know who is referring you. So that's step 1.
Know who is referring you.
Absolutely. So step 2 is you have to make sure that you actually have a follow-up process for once you've received referrals. Now, this is it's a small part of the process, right? It's not a huge part of the process. It's kind of a small part, but you got to know what are you going to do when you receive a referral? Now, there's a lot of other pieces to it, but if we can't remember to thank someone when they send us a referral, why in the world do we think anything else we do for them is going to trigger more referrals? So it's kind of having that thank you follow-up process that's really important. And that's our first opportunity to start planting referral seeds, also, is when we've received a referral. Now, there's other times we can plant, and referral seeds is just, for me, the language I teach my students to use when they're trying to cultivate more referrals. And that's just, we're planting some seeds. We don't expect them to immediately, bloom some great number of referrals for us. But we've got to have that follow-up process. We got to know that we can thank, and we don't thank by email. We thank in a handwritten card. Even if your handwriting stinks, you still have to do it. And there's an idea behind why this works from the human dynamic and the psychology of it, but you got to have a follow-up process. And then the next step number 3, and that, I think this is kind of what I said is the secret sauce. Step 3 is that what happens when you're not in the process of thanking someone for a referral because you've just received one? What do you do the other 364 days out of the year, right? Or what does it look like the other 12 months out of the year, the other 11 months out of the year? And you really have to have a process of what I say goes beyond keeping in touch and raises you to a level of staying top of mind so that your referral sources or the people you want to become referral sources are seeing you in a different way and they're feeling taken care of. Because you're going to do some outreach to them, what I call touch points. You're going to do some outreach to them, and not every week and not every month necessarily. It depends on your business. It depends on what you're comfortable with. It depends on what's authentic to you. But you're going to follow up with them, and you're going to make sure that you stay top of mind, which keeping in touch is the process and the system out there that tells you to make sure you're calling everybody every 3 months or every 3 weeks. Well, that's fine, but after a while, what are we going to say every 3 weeks on the phone, right? So I know there's a lot of systems out there that teach that whole keeping in touch will generate referrals. I personally believe you have to go deeper than that. And you go deeper with that than staying top of mind and doing things for the referral source that they would appreciate, because we make it all about them, our outreach or our touch points. And then the language we use within those outreach and touch points is really important to plant seeds to actually get them thinking about referrals, but we're never directly stating it. So we're never actually asking, but we're planting those seeds. And that's what we do outside of when we've actually received a referral.
Got it. Got it. In my mind, when I'm picturing, so we're not talking about, for example, putting them in an email autoresponder.
No.
And just periodically pinging them with some content. Hi, Stacey. Been a long time since we chatted. Not that.
No, because that's going to end up in my junk box, or the delete button is going to take care of it. Because it's what you're doing for everybody, right? It's not authentic. It's not about me as the referral source. It doesn't make me remember you. It doesn't make me feel different about you. And ultimately, at the end of the day, I need to feel something different about you and trust that you do great work before I'm ever going to refer someone to you. Because I refer someone to you, not really about you. Like, Pat, you may be awesome, but that's not really why I'm referring people to you. I'm referring someone to you because somebody else has a problem, and I know you can solve it. But for you to stay top of mind, to be the person I think about when it comes to being able to solve it, you can't have landed in my junk email box, because that's all you're doing is emailing me every couple of weeks. Hey, what's happening? What's up? Or here's some content you probably don't need.
Okay, so why don't you do? Well, so let's say I'm one of the people that's in your network that I might potentially refer somebody to you. What would this sound like? How would you approach me?
Right. So it wouldn't be any like canned conversation that I'm expecting to have, right? So if I have identified you as, hey, I'd really like to generate referrals from Pat. So what does that look like? Well, the first thing I kind of decide is what do I know about you? Right? What are the things that I want to do? And when I teach my students to kind of go through this process, we're not trying to do everything on an individual level, because that actually, let's be honest, is too much work, particularly because most of my students will fall somewhere between a dozen to 2 or 3 dozen referral sources. I mean, I have people who have more and I have people who have less. It depends on what kind of volume of new clients you need and the volume of referrals you want to receive. But at the end of the day, what I would look at it is like, what are the things that I could do that make what I'm doing all about you, right? So it may be, right? So let's say I'm just going to make this up. Let's say I knew that you were a parent, right? And so maybe I'm going to recognize Father's Day, and I'm going to send something specific and special and a note to you for Father's Day, right? But I'm not necessarily sending you a newsletter that I send out every month and putting some mention in there about, the best compliment you can give me as a referral. Well, of course it is. Right. And people are not paying attention to that the way that they used to. And that was kind of like brand new language 5 or 10 years ago. So I would do different things. And this is kind of what I teach my students, that you would receive and recognize that I paid attention to who you are. Even if I've got you grouped with other groups of referral sources, you're receiving something that is more, personal, and more that you knew I took time to do it. That doesn't mean I'm handwriting everything I do, right? When we're building this out over the course of a year, I'm not handwriting everything I do, and I'm not spending a ton of money. I have lots of clients who go through this and do a shoestring budget, but I'm trying to figure out and pay attention to what are the things that are about you that I think would matter. Maybe I know somebody that you want to meet. And I know them. So what's one of the ideas I give my students is called a network lunch. So if we're local, right, I may invite the two of you to lunch, and I'll go along and let you guys meet each other. Right? There's lots of things you could do. I could recognize, I could recognize your birthday, right? If I wanted to. I am terrible at that, so I don't ever do that in my plan, but I do have students who do that. It just depends. But remember, it's not the one isolated incident. This is an ongoing process that I want to put you through so that you feel different about me, that I rise to a level of staying top of mind, and that I care. Because I believe your referral sources are actually more important to your business than your clients are, because that's who brings you more clients. Now, I'm not saying your clients aren't important. They're wonderful. I love mine. I'm sure you love yours. But at the end of the day, people who bring you new clients are just a level of gold in your business. So it's not something I'm trying to do quickly or to like get it out of the way.
Yeah,
but I've got to be able to focus.
Yeah, I can really see this. I could see like saying, I could see calling you up and saying, Stacey, I saw that post that you made on LinkedIn. That was a really terrific find, and we just start talking about it.
Yep. And that could be, and I always tell my clients, I was like, even though we're building this out for a 12-month process, and even though we're going to know what we're going to do as we kind of group our referral sources together, and they group them in different ways, depends on how the student wants to group them together. The idea is that when those moments happen, you have to take advantage of them.
Right.
When you see the post, you have to take advantage of it. It's doing the things that are unexpected. Like I had somebody that was not a referral source of mine, decided, I wrote an article. It was called Network or Being Known by a Network. And it was the difference between, it's networking or being known by a network. And it was talking about the difference between those two ideas. He shared it on his LinkedIn network with a whole bunch of people. And off of that post, picked up the phone and called me or sent me an email and said, hey, I think I need to work with you. And I said, great. And I sent that person a gift card to a restaurant that was near his office. He didn't expect that from me, right? I mean, it's not this huge gesture, but to him, I took the time to pay attention. And I sent it to him. I specifically said, you may not know this, but when you shared my post, I picked up a new client from that. And I wanted to tell you, thank you. And I remember he actually ran into my husband. He happens to know my husband too. And he was like, oh my gosh, I didn't see this coming. This was awesome. And since then, he has continued to send me people because I did one little thing, right? And now I'm on his radar. And now he knows I take care of him. And I took care of him in a way he didn't expect. And it was like a $25 gift card to a restaurant, right? Versus a client that I received from that was going to, pay me thousands of dollars over time. So it was worth it to send that to him. And, and I don't do it because I would expect now more referrals are going to come, but I do know the psychology behind it says that I'll rise to a level of top of mind. And if an opportunity comes up, I will be the first person he thinks about. And because I stay in touch with him, because he's one of my referral sources and I put him through my process, he continues to refer.
Right. So what are steps 4 and 5?
So step 4 is usually what I would tell folks is should be your favorite step, and it's the automation step. Now, when I say automate, I don't mean that what we're putting together can be completely managed and handled by a third-party robot or some level of software. What I'm talking about is that we group these things in a way so that doing the work of generating referrals doesn't overtake your life because you have a business to run or a book of business to take care of in addition to generate referrals. So we automate what we can. We put things on a cycle. We make sure that things are on our calendar and we know what to expect. And if I'm sending a Christmas card in December, I'm not thinking about it in February, right? It's on the list. The schedule has been built. So step 3, we've built out our year-long plan and we've gotten all the language together we're going to use. Then automation is really about getting it on our calendar or outsourcing pieces of it if possible, and just knowing what we're going to do when we're going to do it so that when it comes time to do something, all the pieces are there for us so we can process through it quickly. And so it's called the automation step, just to make this easier for you. But I'll tell you, I would rather spend time doing this all day long than any type of cold calling or networking. It's the best use of my time in that regard. And then step 5 is we gotta track it. Like if it's not working, we need to know. So we have to track it. We have to measure our success, and we have to make sure that we're working the system. And if the system's not working, we're willing to tweak it. So we have to measure.
Excellent. 5 steps. Now, it's my understanding you're writing a book on this?
I am. Yes.
Why don't you tell us about your book?
Sure. So the book title is Generating Business Referrals Without Asking. It's coming out in the fall of 2018. Though the exciting stuff is the ebook will be out in July. And of course, pre-orders come out in the February-March timeframe. And really the book breaks down why we should not ask, kind of gets into the sales psychology behind like what's going on with the psychology of asking and why we shouldn't do it. And it's just providing a different viewpoint if you don't want to ask. And then it kind of goes into the advice we've been receiving and why it's not working and making sure we truly understand the definition of a referral. But then it dives in deeper to those 5 steps, and it actually provides some resources for you to consider of how you make those 5 steps come to life within your business. And I think that's the important piece of the book is those kind of those last 5 chapters that each take a piece of the step and really kind of go into detail. So, it's why you don't have to ask. And that allows you to unleash a referral explosion.
And you're going to have a landing page so that people can pre-order it, right?
Absolutely. So it'll be withoutasking.me. But what I'll do is I'll put together a one page that has some other information, if people don't want to pre-order and they want to wait till later, I'll put together a one page for your listeners where they can find some other resources, like a link to a referral quiz they can take to see what stage they are or their skill level at generating referrals today. It's a great document I have called The 7 Deadly Sins of Generating Referrals. We've talked about one, why you don't ask, but there's obviously 6 other ones that people need to understand, the big no-nos. And then there's some other resources on there, and I'll also link to the pre-order page as well. And that's growthbyreferrals.com/salesbabble.
Awesome. If you could give our listeners a piece of advice they could go and take action on right now this week, what would that be, Stacey?
So the one piece of advice I would give would go back to listen to this interview and hone in on step number 1 that I talk about in my online program, Growth by Referrals. And that is, you've got to know your referral sources. And if you don't have referral sources, you need to know who should be your referral sources. And I don't mean you know how many of them. I mean, you know their names, whether you have 5 of them or 55 of them. You need to know who your referral sources are. It's step 1. You can't move forward without it. And it's usually the easiest thing for people to do to figure out who has been referring them business or who should be.
It's almost like you're tracking these people like you would your prospects in your CRM.
Yes, absolutely. And if you have a CRM, right? I mean, I give people an Excel document because I don't want any software to get in the way of someone tracking what they're supposed to be tracking. But if you have a CRM, some people use the CRM as the reason nothing happens. But if you have a CRM, you can always add a category that, yes, the source of this potential client or potential prospect was a referral, but go one level deeper with your CRM and have it put in the person's name who referred you, and then have a whole contact list just for that referral source as well. You should do it both ways within your CRM.
Awesome. Stacey, thank you very much for coming by and babbling with us here on Sales Babble. Hey, this has been a ton of fun.
It's been my pleasure. Thanks.
I really love what Stacey's telling here because this kind of goes counter to a lot that you hear about. Like I remember a few years ago, I was listening to a TED Talk. I was on YouTube, and the lady was talking about, she was giving this talk about never cold call again. And that's why I listened to it. I thought, I'm always interested in this. And her whole premise was we need to get more referrals. If you get a lot of referrals, you won't need a cold call. But her process was, I found, troubling. First thing she would do is talk to her clients and say, do you know anybody I could help? And commonly, just by being asked, people would say, yeah, I think I could maybe help somebody. And she said, well, I want you to do me a favor. Could you set up an appointment for the 2 of us? Like she would actually ask them to reach out to that person, clear a schedule, look at my schedule, and then set up an appointment for me and this other prospective client to talk. And I'm like, well, that's pretty pushy. And she said, oh, people are happy to do this. People are happy to do this. You should do it all the time. I'm like, well, what's next? Should I then ask my customers to go get me a cup of coffee afterwards? I thought that was way over the top. The kinds of stuff that Stacey's talking about, I'm much more comfortable doing. With that said, I'm not afraid to ask people if there's anybody you think that I could help, and who are they, and would it be okay if I could mention your name? But for people who are more shyer, I believe I really like this process that Stacey's got, and the thing about it is it's a whole plan. Like she said, it's a yearly plan. And you just follow the process, and you just click off it every day, and you're going to be chipping away with this, and you just got to build it up by leveraging this referral network that you have, this personal referral network that you've created. As she mentioned, she has a giveaway for all of us in Sales Babble. If you go to www.growthbyreferrals.com/salesbabble, there's some things in there. There's a 5-step supplemental material. There's an assessment in there. All kinds of interesting things. And if that seems too hard to remember that link, you can also find it in the show notes at salesbabble.com/206. Next week, we're going to be meeting, who meet next week? Next week, we're meeting Jeff Davis. Oh, yeah. and how to assert your leadership role and take control of a sale. Very, very interesting topic. Jeff is somebody who's been listening to Sales Babble for many years. He's a longtime listener, and he and I have been in communication for years, and it's pretty excited to have him on. I think you can find a lot of value in that. That's why lots of roles in sales are like executive, they'll say account executive, because that's what your job is. Your job is to be a boss and to control that sale, take that leadership role. Did you enjoy this podcast? If so, tell your friends. If you're on iTunes right now, I don't know if you're using an iPhone. If so, go right into iTunes, and if you could give us a 5-star review, that would be great. If you'd like to give a 1-star review, you can skip it. Don't worry. Don't waste your time. But that would mean a lot if you were to do that. I would really deeply appreciate that. Got a question, got a comment? Don't hesitate to reach out. Send me an email. Give me a ring. Go on the website, click Babble Me. There's lots of ways to reach out to me. Like today, a guy's been struggling with trying to get a job in the tech space, and he and I had a long conversation, and he was like, "This is great stuff." He goes, "I got an interview at 2:00 this afternoon." So it was really fun being able to help him out. What a good time for both him and me to chat. I'll do the same with you. Happy to help. So until next week, take care and have a highly successful, profitable selling day.
Thank you for listening to the Sales Babble podcast. Find us at www.salesbabble.com.